Greetings, Darklings, from across the interweb. It is once again I, the Duchess Precious Ken, here for the Sounds and Shadows podcast. I have a really exciting guest, somebody who I've seen play live a couple times, and another European band. We just had Then Come Silence on, and so it's great that we're starting to show some of those to some of our American viewers. Before that, I'll give a shout out to another European artist, as I always say. If you send me something in the mail, I will wear it on the show and talk about it. I have on today my lovely ESA tank top electronic substance abuse, where the sun is out, so my guns are out. So a very cool tank top there and just great band. Jamie just does some of like the coolest hard hitting EBM electronic body music out there. Just a really cool guy and does amazing videos that he directs and shoots himself. So if you don't know about electronic substance abuse, go check that out. So next up, I'm very excited for a band. As I said, I saw at Cold Waves a couple years ago there. And I think I saw in Detroit once too. But a very cool band from Europe, from Denmark, post punk band. It is my great pleasure to welcome to the show the Foreign Resort.
Hello. Hello, Ken. Thanks for
Hey,
having me.
why don't you start? You don't have the rest of the band with you, but why don't you start out, introduce yourself and what you play, and give a shout out to the other guys that aren't here.
Yes, well, my name is Mikkel. I play bass and guitar. I'm the singer as well. And who's not here? Stefan, he plays bass and guitar too. There is an explanation to that, why we both play bass and guitar. And then our drummer, Alyosha, and well, they're both in Denmark. I'm sitting here in Germany today. So yeah, once every now and then we get together and play music.
I know how that goes. My whole band's here in Kalamazoo, and it still feels like we have to pull teeth sometime to find time in all of our schedules. That is the pain of the modern musician, where everybody has day jobs.
Oh yes, tell me about it. I always say it's almost harder to get the band together than it is to actually book a show.
You are not wrong. Well, wonderful. One of the questions I always like to ask going in is for maybe some of our listeners that aren't as familiar with you. Um, there was a moment, whether it was an album you heard, whether it was a show you saw, something that just clicked. You saw it and you said, "This is it. This is me." And kind of this dark scene music became a part of your life. And I know you guys kind of started from more of a shoegazer angle before you kind of did this more modern inclination towards it. But tell me a little bit about what that was and what started you on the road.
Well, two different, well, kind of the same thing. Well, the band, A Place to Bury Strangers. So there you go with the whole post-punk noise, shoegazy atmosphere there. We played with A Place to Bury Strangers in Copenhagen in 2010, and they invited us to go on their entire European tour, which we couldn't because we had day jobs. But we actually managed to play with them in Berlin and in Copenhagen, and that kind of was until then we had been doing some sort of, I don't know, indie rock. I mean, our first album, Offshore, you might not want to listen to that. I will not promote that. If you're curious, you can probably find that somewhere. And that's
Very
really
Al
it.
Jorgensen of you there.
Sorry?
I said very Al Jorgensen of you there to kind of don't listen to those early records. Listen to these
Yeah,
new ones.
exactly. Well, if you listen, you can definitely hear the difference between that album and the next EP, the 2011 EP, just called The Foreign Resort, because that was post playing with A Place to Bury Strangers. And that's when we found out, okay, there's fuzz. There's actually the fuzz war pedal from Death by Audio. There's, multiple delays and reverb, just everything just, and that kind of just changed our sound into that more explosive sound that we might have been moving a little away from, but that we did for a long time there.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely when I saw you live there at Cold Waves, there's certain bands, especially shoegaze bands, that I call kind of the wall of sound type band. And I would say you're definitely one of those where, from a level standpoint, bass, guitar, vocals, you want everything to impact the listener at the same time and kind of just wash over like a tidal wave on you. And I'd say you guys definitely kind of embrace that effect.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, usually when we do sound live, always the same message, like everything at the same level.
Yeah.
Backing tracks, bass, guitar, and then maybe like vocals on top, but yeah, just up, wall of sound.
So I want to roll over to the last thing that you guys had out was a new single in March, and a very very cool single. I got it over on Bandcamp here, and it was "Resound." And tell me a little bit about that song. What was kind of the impetus behind it, and also what did you do different this time around for kind of this new batch of songwriting? You know, you always want to be evolving as an artist. What's something that you felt like you did different for this one?
Oh God, now that's see, the song is very much in the same vein as what we have done before, but I don't know. I mean, it's funny because there's a little anecdote with the song. I had been talking about bands at a certain festival, and I was like, oh, it's all like for the floor, these dancey bands, and I was kind of just criticizing them to my girlfriend,
Sure.
and then I did this demo, and she was like, oh yeah, who's talking now? Like now you're doing four to the floor, like bam, 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 bam. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. Um, I don't.
Sometimes you have to write bangers, man.
Yeah, yeah, and to try to answer that question, how it came about, like it's weird because people always ask like, which direction are you taking your music, and I always have this idea of I'd like to go in that direction, and then suddenly something drops down, inspiration into my head, and then things come out. So I don't know. It's very hard for me to really say what made it sound the way it did. It's just there
Sure.
was an idea, and then I followed that idea and worked with it. I mean, our drummer, he had a big impact on it as well. The demo had only like 8 notes on the programmed drums, like chick chick
Uh-huh.
chick chick, chick. And then he came up with the whole hi hat thing going. So he actually made it more danceable in the final version. So that's his impact.
See, I love to hear people calling out songwriting contributions of drummers because it doesn't happen nearly enough.
Well, he's our drummer. He's there's kind of this reverse psychology about him. Whatever I ask him to do or suggest him to do, he will do something else. So it's so he will automatically contribute to any song that we have done from this point and on.
See, that's how you push the boundaries is just knowing full well that you get an idea in your head and wait for the other guys of the band to chop it up and hand it back to you. So
Yeah.
I
I
love it.
mean, again, our guitarist Stefan, who's also the bass player, but his guitar playing, like he's a way better guitarist than I am. He could actually, play solos and stuff because he plays in a metal band. So his influence is also like he just has he can play more things than I can and make more noise and stuff. So it's that way that that's his contribution.
Yeah. So you were kind of saying that it's a little, you guys mix and match a little from maybe what your instruments would be, and kind of you said there's a story behind that. What happened that you guys decided to do it the way you did?
What do you mean, the music in general or
Well,
the
yeah,
song?
you said that he's more of a bass player or whatnot, and you play guitar too, but you guys kind of swap it when you do it live. Why is it you guys make that choice?
Well, it's actually a practical choice. So that's the very boring answer. But it's really it's when I'm singing, it puts a limit on what I can play while singing. So if you watch us play the songs where I'm playing bass, for example, live, are the
Uh-huh.
songs that you only have like 8 notes or a relatively simple rhythmical thing going on the bass.
Yeah.
Then and then the other way, if there's too much going on the guitar, I'll be like, okay, I'll just play the bass on this one because I can't handle it there's too much going on. So it's just my limitations actually creating that swap, and then people are like, "Oh, they swap bass and guitar." And it's like, yeah,
That makes sense actually, because I'm the same way. But for me, rhythm guitar playing and singing is pretty easy. It doesn't really tax me that much. But if I'm playing a complex bass line that's off of the rhythm, I get in my own head and it'll throw my cadence off when I'm trying to sing for sure. So no, I get that. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah. That's yeah. And so you know exactly what I'm talking about.
So I think the other thing that's really interesting for you guys, and I love the T-shirt that you have here. You guys aren't afraid to talk about political things going out in the world because, look, art and politics combined. They are, a part of each other. I think it's really hard to make great music or great art without talking about what you believe. And I think that's something that you guys weigh into it. Was there a kind of a message or an idea that went into this last single that you guys were trying to, I don't know, Joe Strummer up a way to tell people about?
Not Resound. That is actually a, a sweet love song and a little ode to my current current. What that sounds so bad. My girlfriend.
Yeah,
That's the story of me coming through a divorce over the last 2 years, and then blah blah. So that's why I'm saying current. But that's
sure.
actually me coming out on the other side in and resounding and being happy. So it's actually the happier side of our dark dark sounds.
I love that though. And I mean, to me, there's definitely a history for that. I mean, we talked a little bit about, I think anybody who listens to your music would hear a little influence of, say, like the Cure pornography or something like that. And I mean, there's another example that of something in goth that I feel is a little bit lost and I don't hear as much as I should, which was romantic goth. You used to have with, The Cure and bands like that, where
Mhm.
that kind of forlorn, talking about your heart was a big part of what goth music was. And that's a little bit lost now. Things are more about kind of, I don't know, talking about the club or maybe politics or things like that now. So no, I love to hear that you wrote a straight up love song to express that you came out of a thing and now you're in a better, happier place.
That's it. I mean, there's gonna be plenty of dark lyrics coming up, but there was this one, and it's like, okay, came from the dark. Here's a little bit of darkness, but now, here we are.
So tell me a little bit then about, I know you did that single. What's going to be coming up for you guys? Are you in the studio now and are you going to have a new album or new EP coming up? And are you going to get back on the road?
I mean, first, we will get back on the road this autumn already. We have shows lined up in Germany, and then next year will be France, Italy, Spain, and so the problem with releasing a new album is actually that we keep on touring, and then the world situation in general. But the main problem is that we're super addicted to playing live, so we keep on playing live, which then takes time from us practicing or writing new stuff. But we are writing new stuff. We have been recording new stuff, uh, and so there's no writer's block. That might be with the lyrics, maybe,
Yeah.
but the songs are definitely coming. And then we have, what do we have? We have like 5 songs recorded,
Oh,
4 demos. So the album is actually there. It just needs to be rehearsed, recorded, and mixed. And yeah, it's good stuff coming. We actually, if we talk about touring, we toured with Hapax back in
yeah.
2022. By the way, thank you for sticking with me for 2 years until I got back to you because of my bad email after I
That
told it.
that's no problem at all. I'm glad that we eventually got to do it and talk now.
Yeah, good. Well, anyway, after the tour, the drummer of Hapax, Francesco,
Uh-huh.
he approached us and said, "Hey guys, if you're making a new album, I have a studio in Naples. You should come to my place and record, and I'll mix and then master, do the whole thing." And because of time restraints, we never went to Naples. But he
Uh-huh.
is, in fact, mixing the album and mastering. So he did
Oh, wow.
what you're listening to now for Resound. That's his mix, and he actually we last well 2 years ago we released the single Overturn, which I mixed, and he did like a little take on that mixing. Said, "Guys, is this the direction you're going?" And I was like, "Okay, my mix totally sucks. That's really."
You
Because
know,
I mean, he's so talented. Like I'm like, how can you make the drums? they sound so thin and everything when we record them, and then they come back from him, and I'm like, wow, it sounds like it's like a 50-inch bass drum or something like that. I'm like, yes.
It's little strokes like that, little brush, and a lot of times it really is just having someone else mix it or master it. You just need somebody else's perspective to really tighten the corners on what you're trying to do and what you're hearing, because it is easy to get lost in your own head in the mix when it's your own stuff and you played it all, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, and also I mean, if anything, the big difference on the new material coming from us, it will be his input. You know, he's already saying like, when you record, be sure to do this and this. We're actually recording in our practice space because our drummer, Alyosha, he's a sound engineer.
Uh-huh.
And as a side note, he actually does sound in the Danish parliament, so that's his job.
That's awesome.
Yeah, well, he has to listen to politicians every day. He's like, I can't take it. Anyway, so we're recording everything in our practice space, and then Francesco, he got back. Well, you need more room mics for the drums if we want to produce this and this sound, and yeah, so he's giving like remote instructions
Yeah.
and engineering on and putting us in certain directions for things. So that's his input. I'm really grateful for that.
There really is something magical. I mean, we can talk a lot about back in the day and some of the, great albums or artists that came out then and how it was different. But what we have today where you can do what you just talked about, where like you have someone in another country giving you feedback on how to set up your recording rig, you recording it, then sending the tracks back to them for mastering or mixing, and it really does just open up art in a way that it hasn't before because of how the world can communicate with each other. I find that really beautiful and awesome.
He actually took it to another level, which we haven't exploited yet. But he was like, I have software so you can log on to with video and to my desk, so you could actually live listen to when he's turning in knobs, and we could sit in our home. And I'm like, all right, well, and we might go there. We're not done with the album yet, so let's see. But he's got everything down there.
Who
It's
knows? It sounds like by the time you do it, you guys are going to put on VR goggles and be sitting behind him in the studio while he masters on the board with little cameras. So
yeah.
that's awesome.
But yeah, and as last thing, well, probably not the last thing, but last thing about Francesco,
Huh?
he's a super cool guy. He's like pure optimism and just this, you always want to hug him, like, oh, and I'm not even a hugger myself, but I still hug him like.
No, I hear you, and it really does make a big difference when you have, we you talked a minute ago and saying like this guy's a genius for what he hears in sound, and say the guy we work with, Pete Burns, is a lot the same way. Kill Shelter, just absolute incredible at sound, but more than that, he does what you're talking about. He's such a good communicator for how to get what we're looking for, even when we don't know how to say it. And
Mhm.
I think that's such an underrated part of sound engineering is somebody who just feeds you energy and gets excited about the music you're making.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the first email I sent to Francesco, he sent the first mix of, yeah, that was Resound, and 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 I wrote some things that I wanted to change. I was like, maybe more guitar. Can we get a little more high treble on this? Blah blah blah. And I think I had like 10 points on that in that email, sending it back to him, and then I apologized and said, I'm really sorry that this is like, there's a lot of things, and he's like, he got back to me saying, that's not a lot at all. I'm like, okay, thanks, easy. I can relax now.
So you mentioned that you have some shows that are coming up, and a lot of them you mentioned are in Europe. And
Mhm.
when you were over in the States, are you planning on coming back? And I kind of wanted you to speak to as a European artist who came over here and did a pretty extensive tour. How difficult was it, and what all went into the process of just getting over here to North America? Because I know I've talked to other bands before. I know Ash Code, for example, I had to write a letter to our government saying like that they were a band that deserves to come over here, and play in the scene. it's really intense, I think, for like the visa situation and whatnot. Can you tell me a little bit about what that's like, maybe for other bands that are wanting to travel back and forth from Europe to the US, and what the experience was like for you?
Yeah, well, first of all, let me put this into perspective. We played the first US tour in 2009, actually, way back,
Yeah.
and that well, I can say this now probably, but there was no visa, and
Yeah, we're
then
past
I
the
think
statute of limitations at this point.
yeah, I mean, and this is probably also where this little story of mine will go because like we started applying for visas in 2012. We played South by Southwest, so we needed that kind of letter from that festival. So just say we for I mean, for over 10 years, for what 15 years now, we've been touring the US. Back 5 years ago, we toured more on a regular basis, like once or at least twice per year. And every time we applied for that visa, so I've been applying for a lot of visas.
Sure, sure.
And it's just a nerve-wracking process, and it's expensive and it's
Yeah.
unfair. There are some discrepancies between how venues book shows in the US and how the visa process works, in the way that you need to start early with your visa. Otherwise, it doesn't get processed in time for your tour, and then you can't go on the tour. But American venues don't book very far ahead. Over here in Europe, the German venues, they book 12 months, 14 months ahead. Like
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Since
crazy.
COVID, that's actually changed a lot. A lot of American venues now do book way further ahead than they used to.
That's good news for visa appliers then.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's this whole process. Basically, the for a European band to get an artist visa, the general principle is that you have to prove that you are an internationally recognized alien, like an artist that
Right.
is requested by pretty much all over the world, and that can be impossible. Like we
It can
actually
be
had
really
one
tough.
visa that was turned down, so we paid $3,000 and got a no. And then
Wow.
we did we actually go without that visa? Yeah, I
And
can't
it's
say.
got to be complicated too, because venues turn over quite a bit, or the management of them, or, so you could have this lined up, and maybe your last tour you played this venue, and but you go to do it 2 years later, and those venues aren't there, or there's something different, or have a new management now. So you have to redo everything that you already kind of had set up.
Mhm. I mean, the first tours we did were self-booked. So I was basically I was inspired by a friend of mine from California, because yeah, well he showed me the simplicity, but also the huge amount of work of booking any show anywhere in the US. Like you would hook up with a band in a city and then ask the band what venues would be nice to play, and then you contact some more bands, and you have like two, three, maybe even four bands to put together a bill, and then propose that bill to those venues, and then you have a show, and then you do that again in another city and another city. And that I've been doing a lot of that since 2009, so I know exactly the deal. But from the Hapax tour in 2022, we had Tammy Fuller from Spectral Music.
Yeah.
She booked our entire tour, and I was like, "Oh, I'm just sitting here." I mean, she's getting paid, of course. She's taking
Sure,
percentage
sure.
of the fees. But I was like, "Oh, now we have a tour. I haven't done anything. I've just said yes and no and yes." I was like, "Oh, this is amazing. I really love that."
It does take a lot off, I imagine, because I think that is one of the most complicated things for bands these days, are how many hats you have to wear. Being a social media person, being a tour booker, being a merchandise guru, being all these things. It's not like you can just go out there and, know how to play sweet riffs anymore and be able to sing. Like, there is so much more going on if you want to be able to get anywhere in this scene in the modern day.
By the way, shout out to Martin Atkins, who just had a birthday.
Happy birthday to Martin. Yeah, we had him.
Yeah. And his book was a great inspiration for me. It's a little outdated because I bought it that's also like 10 years ago.
Sure.
So but there are some basic things there, merchandise
Oh,
definitely.
yeah.
And so that taught me a lot. And then everything else was a lot of it was self-taught. You fail and then you like, okay, we can't do that.
he still teaches a college course on it too, where you can kind of enroll and take a class that kind of goes along with the book and how to do that in the modern day.
Here's by the way, here's a hint. Anyone touring North America, touring the US and think they want to go up to Canada just to play Vancouver or Toronto or Quebec, but Montreal, don't bring merch. They will you at the border, like the U.S. Customs. When you go back down, we lost that. Here's a real tour history. Coming
Yeah,
back from Vancouver into the U.S., they stopped us, and we actually went through the commercial gate and said we have merchandise we would like to
yeah, to
declare,
declare.
and then they held us for 5 hours, something like that, and eventually rejected us with our merch. So we had to drive up to Vancouver, FedEx the merchandise to LA to one of our friends, and the merchandise, it arrived in LA on the day we arrived in Copenhagen back in Denmark after the tour. So we basically lost an estimated like between $3,000 and $4,000 worth of merchandise sales on that
Yeah,
tour. It was going really well. That was the whole the Cold Waves tour. So we
yeah,
had sold so much. We were going down to Florida to play what's it
absolution.
called? Absolution,
Yeah.
exactly. So we basically we show up at a festival with no merch.
Jeez, that
Yeah.
is so tough because that's a band's lifeblood these days. I mean, that's what keeps you afloat when you're out on the road, really, is being able to have that merch sales.
Yeah. So if you go to Canada, just leave a box with most of your merch, take for the night, and then they can confiscate that. You can just throw it out of the car once you enter if they won't let you, and then that's fine. But really, don't bring merch.
Wow. No, that's good tip for all the bands out there. And it segues nice to the next thing I want to talk about. I think it's kind of interesting. So you guys are on Artifact, which has like my dear friend Jason Corbett, actors, specters, and a band we just interviewed that I'll be releasing soon, Urban Heat. And so you guys, as an overseas band, and then having a label that's in Canada, Toronto, what's that like for you? What's the experience been, and kind of how have they helped you break into more markets maybe here over in North America?
Well, first up, shout out to Jason Corbett because he was actually the guy. He said we met in Vancouver when we played in Vancouver, and he was like, "Hey, man, you should check out Artifact Records." And I was like, Never mind." And
Yeah,
then
because it,
6 months
you
later,
think
I
you
went
want
back and
somebody local. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. And we were actually looking at Cleopatra at that point, and then the dialogue started with Cleopatra, and we were like, this is weird. And then I went back to Jason and said, can you introduce me to
yeah,
Artifact? And then everything got really comfortable. Anytime we had a question for Jacek, the label owner,
yeah,
he would explain. He might not agree with what we proposed, but he would have a long and elaborate reason why he wouldn't agree. And I really respect
sure.
that. Then I understood why he wanted it differently. And then that's why I really appreciate Artifact as a
Yeah,
label. I mean, that's really good, and that's despite the fact that he's label boss is on in Iceland, and the label is managed in Toronto, and we're in Denmark, and it's like, yeah, I mean, it,
sure.
it
I
works.
imagine that could be a real time zone nightmare when you kind of have to set up meetings or things like that. But also, like I said, I think it does really open doors for you guys in terms of having those contacts here for when you do want to come play shows here, or when they're distributing your new record so that they know how to get it out to the right people here over in the American markets and the Canadian markets.
Mhm, mhm. I mean, well, to end the visa conversation of the U.S. because it
Yeah.
ends in Canada because now before, which was before April, I think this year, a visa for a band would cost approximately around $3,000, and now they increased the prices so that the estimate for a band is now $6,000, and that ends the touring of the US for us, for a band our size. Like that, we cannot profit. We can actually we're going to lose money doing a tour like that.
Yeah.
So So just saying that we will probably tour Canada next time and then maybe fly down to Mexico or something like that because we can simply not afford to tour the US anymore.
Sure.
And so we're happy to have Artifact in Canada and to help us out there with the shows across across that wide piece of land.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
and I will say, yeah, I mean, I think Mexico is another one that they just have such a intense and vibrant uh like goth post-punk scene there. They have some of the most rabid fans in the world. So I mean, that is another way maybe to make it up if it's is such a difficulty there. And I'll tell you, with the political situation in the US right now, I think that's really scary because it could get even worse than it is now depending on how the elections go. It's I don't know, it's a scary time.
There's an interesting fact which I don't know. I can only say how it is. The fees for visas were raised under Obama and under Biden.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
and maybe it was because of something that dated back to another president or
Sure,
whatever.
sure.
I cannot say that. I can only say that this visa increase happened in April this year, like this doubling of the fees or tripling. That was under Biden. I'm like thinking, well, why would he do that? Like that's not in anyone's interest.
I did not know that either. And
So
that's crazy. Well, I'm gonna
and
have
I
to
mean, I do agree with mostly with Biden, right? So it's not a political statement in
right,
any way.
right.
It's a
It
fact.
just happened to be from a money standpoint. That's how it was. That's what happened. So no, that is really interesting.
And I also I'm puzzled that we do have to apply for this artist visa because when American bands or any band comes to Europe, except the UK, but come they you just fly in. You
Right.
just fly into Frankfurt, you fly into Germany or Denmark or Sweden, and people be like, "Yeah, have a nice day," and then you go touring, and that's it.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's true. It's true.
Why couldn't we go the other way? Like have that vice versa, and then we fly into the US. Like Canada, you just have to declare instruments you're bringing, merchandise you're bringing.
Sure.
There you go. Easy.
And I mean, for the most part now, I mean, a lot of bands that are doing that anyway, you're kind of renting something once you get there to go on tour, with the maybe exception of like, something personal to you, like a guitar or whatnot. But most other equipment, you're usually getting when you get there because, again, it wouldn't be economical to fly over your whole, loadout. So,
No, exactly. That was also my point. That's been like that all the time. It's actually good business for the US to have us touring because we put a lot of money. Like we probably, put in like, I don't know, like $10,000 or something, and then we go home and then we may take some money home too, but mostly like it's hotels, car rental, whatever, gas. It's yeah.
all right. Well, wow, that's okay. We covered a lot of ground here. That's awesome, fascinating stuff. Um, Tell me a little bit then, just for fun for some of our viewers, aside from music, what are some of the other things maybe that are inspiring you for the music that you're making? Whether it's, movies that you enjoy, books that you've enjoyed recently, or any other kind of art that you find inspirational outside of music that then, comes back into your head when you're going to write songs.
Oh God, if you're talking about lyrics, I mean, lyrics are always that's my Achilles heel. It really. I'm having a hard time. Like at this point, like a week ago, I was thinking, man, I keep telling everyone I don't have a writer's block because I keep writing music, but I could have a writer's block in lyrics. It's really tough for me because now you're asking me, and I'm thinking politics, love,
Well,
and I'm like, that's it, that's it.
I mean, I was thinking more like, look, just talked about how much it's turned around your life and brought joy that you have this new partner that's really
Mhm.
done that for you. So, I mean, it could be anything like that, whether it's a show you've really enjoyed recently, a movie that you really enjoy, but anything like that that just brought you joy that you feel like, hey, maybe this will factor into, my sound or my writing at some point.
I mean, right now, and when a band that I'm listening a lot to these days are Mets,
Uh-huh.
out of
Yeah.
Canada. They just released an album up on Gravity Hill, and I noticed their lyrics are kind of like now of course I can't quote, but it's very hard hitting lyrics. It's like I want to see the end of it, and it's
Sure.
kind of like words like a fist. And I'm thinking whenever I listen to them, I'm like, oh man, I'm envious. I wish I wrote that. That's really great. So that's kind of an inspiration these days. And it's not. It's funny because it's not. I'm not thinking like, oh, I just want to write evil lyrics about smashing people or whatever. It's more the it brings me like it energizes me to hear these lyrics with that music. So I'm thinking like that's I'd like to be able to create that same kind of universe.
No,
But
I
as
love
far as
that.
yeah, as far as what the topic is, the actual topic of their songs, I don't know. I haven't investigated yet. It's just those words and how they sound and how they come out. That's very much how I also like try to build lyrics myself. It's kind of
Yeah.
like how do they taste, how they feel when you say these words rather than what they mean.
Yeah. No, I hear you, and I have ones like that, like Vision Video. Dusty, I think, is a great example of that in the modern scene. Where, I mean, they're very beautiful songs that he plays, but the lyrics on them have real teeth. He addresses some very intense, hardcore issues, and even talks about them very openly in between songs when you go see his live performance. And I watch young people out in the crowd just getting fired up and inspired by kind of these messages that he has. And it's especially in today's age, it's very fearless to do that. I
Mhm.
mean, because it's so easy, the world is so divisive right now that it's so easy by saying anything to piss off half the world. You know, I and I think the fearless way that he just speaks his heart, I think that goes a long way to it. Like kind of your Bernie Sanders shirt there is a good example of there's a lot of people, here in the States that don't agree with Bernie Sanders politics necessarily, but even the people that don't respect him for his honesty. And
Mhm.
and I think that holds well towards art and lyrics and music as well, as even if people don't agree with necessarily what you're saying, they will respect you if you're speaking truly from the heart.
Mhm. I mean, I know that danger. I mean, the whole Israel-Palestinian thing going on these days. Uh, I wanted to speak up a few times on that topic, but then I'll be honest, I was afraid that it would
Sure.
upset too many people, so I just kept my mouth shut about it. I was like, okay, no. With
That's a
Ukraine,
real
it was a little easier, but because that's not a good thing that Putin's got going. So that's mildly put, right?
right.
And, what was it I wanted to say? Like, yeah, so just that fear of losing fans if you say the wrong political thing. And I'm thinking like, well, lobbyism, what I wrote you earlier too, the whole money thing, that money dictates politics these days, that leaves a lot of people without a voice. So, and it's usually money has a certain political direction, and music often has another political direction, but that's just very few voices there because there's not a lot of money over there. I'm thinking then we've got to stand together and put out that message. That's at least what I'm trying. And an example of what when what do you a good outcome was the thumbnail I sent you for this for this show, the photo of us
Yeah.
playing. We actually played with Then Come Silence in Germany here in June. And I was like, okay, this time there's elections coming up in Germany now here in September, and it looks like the far right, the populist right, they're gonna have a pretty big well, not a win, but they're gonna get a lot of votes.
Sure.
So I actually put on the classic, throw the swastika into the bin
Right.
T-shirt, that classic image, and I put that on. And I was like, okay, showing up ready to defend it. Like, okay, I'll probably have to take some
Right. Have
some
people,
punches
yeah,
for this
like
one.
bickering or whatnot at the show.
Yeah,
But yeah,
exactly. But several people like, I love your shirt. Props. Several people just uh, asked me directly to it and commented positively on that shirt. So I was like, okay, well, maybe more of that, and maybe people actually miss that and request that, but a lot of bands just don't dare to speak up.
it's true. And I think this scene is one that, for the most part, does embrace the ideals of actually being diverse, giving a crap about other human beings, things like that. But you're right. I mean, it's just it's everywhere in the world and it does happen. And I would say, yeah, like kind of like talking about even at Dusty shows, there'd always be one or two doofuses that'd try saying something. And I love that he's just a very intelligent guy and wasn't afraid to go right back at them. But that's another thing that's scary is when you get into trying to share your heart on politics on a serious issue like that, you have to be really, really well versed in it because you're going to get pushback from it. And so it's tough. Then again, we're talking about all the hats that we wear. You're already merch and social media and this and that. Well, now you need to be an expert in political history and whatnot to be able to speak your heart on these issues, because otherwise you could find yourself in a bad spot of cornered if called out because you didn't know that much all of the individual little aspects.
Yeah. And that is actually one of my fears, speaking up or wearing a t-shirt, because I'm just that guy that, and you probably know this situation, someone says something to you, and then half an hour later you're like, man, I should have said this and that, but it's half an hour later, it's too late. And then
Sure.
and I probably I'll end up in a situation like that at some point, but I'll the more you have elections like the US election coming up and you have the German elections. Denmark is relatively peaceful these days, so that's good.
Sure.
England turned out well, and whatever. But yeah. Well, we'll end up talking politics here and there from time to time when it's necessary. I'm sitting from Denmark as a Danish band playing in Germany, having a US. Fan base as well, and then trying to tell everyone, go out and vote for the right person. God damn it!
No, it's true. And but I think that is really important. And I think because of what you said, that you see the politics of a lot of different lenses and places, I think it gives you a unique perspective to kind of look at the world as a whole and think about some of these things. Because in America, for example, like someone like me has lived 46 years of life who couldn't possibly comprehend the way in Denmark the services and what you get for your tax dollars. Your
Yeah.
tax dollars are a lot. Okay, I mean pay a lot in taxes, but I think the thing that Americans don't understand is what you get for what you pay. Whereas we pay plenty in taxes, but you get relatively nothing back in exchange for it in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
In terms of healthcare, social programs, education, things like that.
I mean, I could get into a lot of things about these things. I just a simple fact here. I traveled with my family back in 2008 in no 2018 in the US. We did a road trip, and because we needed the basics, like oats and milk and stuff for just having breakfast.
Yeah.
So I compared the prices, and actually, despite the lower sales tax in the US, those basic groceries are more expensive in the US than they are in Denmark. With our 25% sales tax nationwide, it's still cheaper to buy milk and oats in Denmark. And I'm thinking, like, where does all that money go in the US then? Like, why is it more expensive? I don't know. We
I
can
think
only
it's because they
wonder.
purposely want to not have it be milk and oats and have us buy chicken fingers instead so that we all get diabetes and then have to pay more for healthcare.
Yeah. Oh
Oh,
God.
whoa. Okay. That might have been a little conspiracy theory. Okay.
Yeah. Let's talk about music. This gets too depressing.
Whew. All right. Coming back around. So you mentioned that you're recording for it. And one of the things that I always like to do at the end of the interview here is to spin out so that people can get an idea of your sound if they haven't heard you before. Um, I could use the most recent single that we've talked about here with Resound or Overturn. But if people were hearing you for the first time over your American audiences, what's a song that you'd like me to spin out to really what you think is the ethos of the foreign resort sound?
Oh my God. Well, I mean, there are so many aspects of our sound.
You could just take it easy and take the most
Yeah.
recent one, but I just thought I'd, see if there was
I
one
mean,
that you
the classic, it would be Flushed from 2013, the New Frontiers album. That's
Yeah.
a pretty all-round thing. It has both the rhythmical thing going. It has the vocal line and everything. I mean, we sort of go from the four to the floor to the more like punk-based riffs and slower songs. But that one, Flushed, has it incorporates all of those elements. I believe that would be a good start.
I
Watch
love
the
it.
video made by Arian Sohaili, a friend of ours from LA, and he made this really cool video with some masochistic stuff going on.
I love it. I love it. And a lot of times, obviously, because bands are just looking to promote the newest thing they have come out. But I love that you did a callback to something before, and so I think that's great. Let's spin out to that, the song "Flush," and we'll spin out the video as well here. But I want to thank you again, Mikkel, for getting around and coming to talk to me. Like I said, when we chatted there at Cold Waves, 2 years of life got in the way, but you got around to coming out and joining us still. And thank you so much. I'll include on the video there as well some of the upcoming tour schedule for you guys so that people can go and see you play. And please reach out and get a hold of me when that new album drops so that we can make sure to share it in the group and tell people about it. Amazing band, Thorn Resort. Thank you for being with us today. This has been the Sounds and Shadows podcast, and we are going to be spinning out to the song Flood. Keep it dark, yeah.
All into my night, sleeping, lasting it all, asking for my love, but you're nowhere now, you're not anywhere near tonight, I'm dancing on my own, like so many times before. It all came down. In the corner they'd see me bleed when you decided never to turn around. Don't we all cling on to the noose?